Hi, everybody. You're listening to Eve Harow on Rejuvenation for the Land of Israel Network. Back in Israel, had a very quick trip to the States. In the end, the One Israel Fund dinner was postponed until April 26th, so you guys still get a chance to see me in New York, and I'll give you more details as that goes. And we've got APAC coming up, and then still planning an event for Saturday night of APAC. So there's a lot of things happening, but it's always great to be back in the land, and especially for Tu B'Shvat, which we just had a few days ago, the birthday of the trees. So it's raining, and the trees are just cooking up all their great stuff inside. It looks like everything is so dead, but the potential is so there. But I'm sitting now. Today is February 12th, 2020, the 17th day of Shvat 5780. Pre-taping this, sitting with an old friend, Mike Cohen, who is the strategic advisor to the Druze Veterans Association. And this is a week that is being devoted to the Druze. We're going to talk about who they are and why specifically this week. Well, everything is connected to the Torah in the end. And this week's Parsha, which you will have already read when you hear this show, is the Parsha, the weekly portion of Yitro, of Jethro, and that is connected to the Druze. So first of all, Mike, thank you so much for joining me here today on Rejuvenation.
My pleasure, but I'm not that old.
In any event, so tell us. I mean, who are the Druze? People hear about the Druze. We talk about them. You go up north in Israel, and you see their villages. You see them in the army. You see them in a lot of the security services here in Israel. But who exactly are the Druze?
The Druze are a very, very small minority in Israel, only about 1.6% of the entire population, and they consider themselves the descendants. Some consider themselves physical, others consider themselves spiritual descendants of Yitro, of Jethro, who was Moses' father-in-law. And in this week's parasha, we just read that Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, sits with Moshe before they receive the Ten Commandments and says, listen, you can't be a dictator. You can't be a tyrant. You have to be a leader. And a leader can't do everything by himself. And the basics of democracy, creating levels of security, levels of police forces, levels of judges, levels of communal leaders, tens, hundreds, thousands, comes from Yitro's advice to Moshe. And it's the first time that we have a document that explains how democracy should work.
Right. And delegating, that somebody can't feel that they are smarter than everyone else. This all always so relates to modern day politics. You have to trust the people around you. You have to be able to delegate to the people around you. You can't do it all. Moses is like completely overworked. There's a line out of his tent, from morning till night, people looking for advice. And what's so great about this is a beautiful father-in-law, son-in-law relationship where they don't become the other. I mean, Moshe obviously does not become a Midianite. Jethro, as far as we know, and that's an interesting question, does not become an Israelite. Is he a monotheist? Because we have to be so careful. He didn't convert to Judaism, that not in the way that we would think of today. There's a place called Nebi Shweib, which is in the north on Mount Arbel, which is apparently traditionally Jethro's burial place. And that is one place I know that the Druze do make, that they go to once a year, and that's where they make a pilgrimage to. And one more thing, because there's so much to talk about with the Midianites. The Midianites are a nation that are sometimes friends with ours, and sometimes enemies, which is exactly where the Druze fall into also. The Druze in Israel are more than just friends. They are really brothers in arms. But then we've got Druze in other countries who will fight us to the death. So there's a lot of interesting parallels here.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing new in history. There's nothing new under the sun. A smart king once said that. The reason the Druze in Israel, and if you go back in history, by the way, you read books of people who traveled here in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, they all write there's this small group called the Druze who live in the area who are very friendly with the Jews. And as
depending.
Yes, sometimes yes and sometimes no. And it's interesting that the ones that are in the area that became the state of Israel, for the most part, were friendly. The ones in the areas that did not become part of the state of Israel were, for the most part, not friendly, even though they're cousins.
Well, which makes total sense because, first of all, when we talk about the area, we're talking about the north of Israel, and that would include then, of course, the Golan Heights, Syria, and Lebanon. And so when this artifice of the nation states is smacked down on here after World War I, so then some of them are in and some of them are out. The ones on the Golan Heights have not accepted Israeli citizenship because they don't know if we're ever going to be stupid enough to give the Golan Heights to Syria, then they don't want to show up with an Israeli identity card and be Syrian. So they're kind of straddling the fence. But the ones in the Galilee, the ones in Haifa, have really become Israelis. But who are they? They're not Muslims. If you call a Druze a Muslim, they will get very upset, right? So they sourced out of Egypt about a millennia ago.
Mm-hmm. Not only are they not Muslims, but they call it Druze is a name given to them by the West, just like many things.
Doesn't it mean tailor?
Yeah, but their word for themselves, what they call themselves, is the Muwahadin, which means from the word yachad, together. They're together with nature, they're together with themselves, and they're together with the Creator. And they do consider themselves monotheists. And when the Yishuv began back in the 1910s, 1920s, it was very easy.
That's the Jews really gathering again to form a community, which there were always Jews in the land of Israel, but really getting stronger.
It was quite easy for the relationship to develop because the Druze have no political aspirations. Mm-hmm. They were persecuted and prosecuted and chased by Islam all over the Middle East, and they live on hilltops, far away from each other, and they spread out the people, just like Jacob did when he went to meet Esav. He spread his family out. He split it up. They do the same thing. So they live on hilltops in order to be able to see what's coming, and that's why they became fierce warriors. In their religion is very, very close to Judaism when it comes to ethics, when it comes to what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. They're not allowed to have more than one wife. They family comes first. They have to protect their family. They're not allowed to eat pork. They're not allowed to lie. Mm-hmm. They keep the Ten Commandments as gospel, so to speak. And it's very interesting to sit with their elders and compare notes on what they do and what we do. They ask the sovereign for three things. They ask the sovereign to respect their religion, give them freedom of religion, respect their land, let them keep their land and farm their land the way they want to, and respect their women, which is very interesting because in the Middle East, that was a very difficult thing. Mm-hmm. And when they met with the first Jews who were trying to resettle the land, it was a very easy thing for the Jews to say, of course. Mm-hmm. So they joined hands strategically and militarily. Just like Jews, not allowed to kill. But if somebody comes at you, you have to be better than them.
Well, that's the distinction. You're not allowed to murder, but you have to defend yourself. They come out of Egypt about 1,000 years ago, a very secretive religion. They've got the Ukal and the Jukal, the people who know the religion, a lot of whom are women, and the people who don't. And when they begin in Egypt and then have to flee there, of course, because of persecutions, they also close the religion down. So they believe in the souls, resurrection of the souls, but there's a certain number of Druze souls, and that's it. And you can't convert to become a Druze, and you can't really technically convert out of being a Druze either. But they're not nationalistic. They've never really wanted their own country, as you said. They just will be very, very loyal to whoever is sovereign to them. It's interesting to see what's happening now in the Middle East, like in Syria. They may end up with their own little autonomous region if Syria ever stops everybody killing themselves there. But in general, they will be fiercely loyal to whoever protects them. And then you have to wonder, like when they jump ship, then they have, I think, a very well-honed antenna for who will protect them and who won't. And when they jump ship, like has happened in Lebanon, for example, where they've backed certain leaders and haven't backed certain leaders, that's a very good clue as to what's going to come.
In Lebanon, if you call yourself, somebody calls you a Druze, you're dead. Mm-hmm. Because the Muslims will come right after you. They call themselves in Lebanon Muwahadin, because these Muslims don't necessarily notice. It's Muwahadin is okay, but
stay under the radar.
Right.
So what's the Veterans Association? Because that, of course, means that if they're veterans, that means that they served in the forces.
Correct. About 10 years ago, a group of guys who got out of the army, veterans, together with a great hero of Israel from the Jewish community, Moshe Arens, got together and said, we have to start doing some modernization within our community. We have to get our kids to go into modern businesses, modern technology, modern education, and they put together a plan to create a technological center. Right now, it's being called the DTech, It's going to be the first Druze High-Tech Empowerment Center for both men and women, including a Hasbara center, a place where we're going to be able to teach how to represent Israel when you're out there in the world. And in order to make
Do they put a premium on education like the Jews do?
They put a great premium on education, but it's a different kind of education. Family comes first, and therefore you have to have a paycheck. They get married very young, and you have to have a paycheck at home, and that pushes them into the security services, because then they're guaranteed that there's a salary every single month. In order for them to be comfortable moving into high tech, it has to be brought into the community as opposed to having them go out of the community.
So you say, I mean, they're in the security services. Obviously, we're talking about that. But was that a given? For example, what a lot of people say is everyone in Israel serves in the army, which isn't true. Okay, right now we're only approaching about 50% of people who are eligible to serve in the army who actually do, because a lot of the ultra-Orthodox don't, and Israeli Muslims don't. But here you have a group of citizens who are not Jewish, yet who do serve in the armed forces. So is that because they want to? Is that because they're conscripted? Is there an issue here of loyalty? I mean, as we said a few minutes ago, the Midianites, if you will, or the Druze, I mean, if you look in the history, and just a few hundred years ago, especially in the north, the Druze slaughtered a lot of Jews, like in Tzfat. I mean, there were periods, especially under the Ottomans, the Muslims, where the Druze were not so friendly to the Jews, quite the opposite. So was there a question here over whether the Druze would be loyal citizens enough to be protecting the people of Israel?
The sovereign was the Turks, so you have to be loyal to the Turks. The sovereign then became the British, but that was questionable because that was only a mandate. So then they had a decision to make. Some of them decided, as you said, that they have to still fight, and the majority decided
still fight the Jews.
Okay. And some of them, because the Jews wanted to settle the Galilee, and that was a danger to their land. They didn't get to know the Jews. Once they started to get to know the Jews, the leadership decided that this was the right thing to do. The Jews were going to win. The Jews were going to be the sovereign, and therefore we should put our lot in with the Jews. Just so people understand, in the last few years, just the last few years, how central the Druze are within our security systems. There are only 120,000 of them in the country. It's a tiny, tiny minority, but they're everywhere. The two police officers that were murdered on the Temple Mount in 2000
by Muslim terrorists,
by Israeli Arabs from Umm-el-Fahim, by Israeli Arabs, Israeli Muslims from Umm-el-Fahim. They were going to kill some tourists, and these two police officers jumped in front of the bullets. Both of them killed, both of them Druze. A year later, a terrorist walks into a synagogue in Harow and starts shooting people at prayer, wearing their phylacteries, wearing their tefillin, people who didn't serve in the army, people who have no way to defend themselves, and an off-duty traffic officer who happened to be Druze was the one who ran into the building and stopped the massacre. The Israeli IDF Surgeon General is today a Druze. The president's liaison to the IDF, to the military, is a Druze. The general who's in charge of all the civil services in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza is a Druze. They have risen. We have a Supreme Court justice. We have ambassadors. We have representatives. They have risen to the highest levels of Israeli society as equals because they made a strategic choice. They want to be a part of the majority, even though they're a minority.
And I think this is an important point also about Israel, that it's not just Jews who rise here in Israel. Okay, if we've got a population that's loyal, we don't really care what religion they are. They're loyal to Israel. They want to be a part of Israel. They also are a tremendous asset because they usually speak fluent Arabic. So putting them, let's say, around the Old City, around the Temple Mount, in some very hot spots where they can communicate with a lot of the people up there is also incredibly important. They are tough. And they also, to a great degree, understand the Middle East reality and mentality because they've been here for a long time. And that is incredibly important as well.
And that's exactly why we're here. We decided that it came time that the world Jewish community, and of course our friends who are not Jewish all over the world, understand who these people are. And there is a very important Jewish ideal, very important Jewish ideal called Hakarat Tov. It's a very difficult concept to explain because it's giving thanks, recognizing good, gratitude, thanksgiving, all of these different words put it together into one concept, hakarat tov, to recognize good. And the decision was made by their friends of the Druze veterans around the world, that it's high time that we do something. So we took the week of Yitro, the week that we're going to be reading about Yitro in the Torah, and we decided to dedicate that week as a global week of Hakarat Tov to the Druze defenders of Israel. The reason we say defenders and not veterans is because they're police and they're firefighters and they're leaders in other Israeli security services that are not talked about so much. And it's been extremely successful. 50 different countries on Sunday this week, 50 different countries had churches praying and saying prayers of thanks to God for the Druze and thanking the Druze for their activities. On Monday, we went up to Jerusalem, and the Druze Waqf, the Druze religious leaders, went to the Western Wall, met with the leadership in Jerusalem, political, religious, economic leadership, and everywhere we went, the thanks was profuse and the thanks was tremendous. On Tuesday, we dealt with media throughout the world, and today we're on Wednesday, and I'm starting out with your show, and then we're going to be going up to Nebi Shweb, which is Yitro's tomb, and we're going to be having leaders there from all over the world meeting us and discussing the Druze centrality within our community, even though they're tiny, tiny, tiny minority. And that's what this week is all about. And I'm hoping that even though your listeners are hearing this the week following and weeks following, because it's on the internet and you could hear it forever, wherever you are, wherever you have a moment, stand for a second and think for a second about the important partnerships. You, as friends of Israel, whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, are standing for Israel and praying for Israel every day. Have these guys in mind. Have these real friends of Israel in mind who put their lives on the line. 505 members of the Druze community have already been killed defending Israel. Over 1,500 have been injured. And they're a wonderful, small story within the great return of the Jewish people to the land.
I think what's important is that they had choices also. I mean, as I said, not all of them have joined with Israel, and they're not doing so well, the ones who haven't, which is unfortunate. And I think, again, they had choices and they decided to join with the Jewish people and to grow with Israel and to become educated and to enter the modern world. But do they get pushback from Druze? I mean, let's say Druze in Lebanon, who are technically enemies of Israel. Do they get pushback? Do they get yelled at? Do they get called traitors?
Well, one of the great things that happened this week, as far as they're concerned, is that this campaign, which is it's called hashtag Shukran Druze 2020. Shukran is thank you in Arabic. So hashtag Shukran Druze 2020 became so successful all of a sudden that Lebanese newspapers have been attacking the leaders of the organization. Koftan Halabi, who created the organization by name, has been attacked in several Lebanese publications as a traitor, as somebody who's trying to divide the Druze from the Palestinian Muslims, attacking Islam, which is, they're all very happy that that's what is being said about them. On the other hand, we have had people from Syrian Druze and Lebanese Druze who are in freedom today in Western countries celebrating and saying, thank you for doing this because it's nice that we get some recognition. Our website, right now, it is about 10 o'clock in the morning in Israel, Jerusalem Standard Time. For the last day, 23 hours now, our website has been attacked non-stop. Every minute I am getting, as we sit here, we're hearing beeps from my phone. Every minute I'm getting alerts that attacks are taking place on our website. I've got an entire team in South America and in North America sitting there protecting the site. We went down yesterday for a couple hours, once or twice, but they are trying very hard. This has upset a lot of people because it's very, very public. The community, the Druze community in Israel, is looking at this with pride. And they're saying, we're standing up, this is who we are, this is Parashat Yitro. The world should know how loyal we are to the Torah, to the God of Israel, to the land of Israel, to the people of Israel. And if they want to attack us for us, we'll wear that as a badge of pride.
Wow, that's again pretty gutsy. And I mean, we'll see what happens. You know, the Golan Heights is an interesting place because on the one hand, as I said, they're wary about taking Israeli citizenship. The more and more we move away from the stupid idea, anyhow, that the Golan is ever going to revert to Syrian control. It's been under Israeli control for way longer than Syrian control, and everybody there is doing much better. We see what's going on in Syria. It's insane as opposed to what's going on in Israel. Do you think there's a chance and Israel did not force the Golan Druze to take Israeli citizenship, left them in actually not such a bad situation. I mean, they were educated, they got education under Israel. They got health care under Israel. They got the rights without the responsibilities of being Israelis. And when times were quieter in Syria, they also went to university in Syria. I mean, they were allowed to cross the border. They were allowed to marry their Syrian cousins, et cetera, et cetera. But as the years go on, and as we see that Syria is probably dead in the sense of the country that we once knew, and God knows what's going to be there. Is there more of a move, from your understanding, for the Druze living on the Golan Heights to finally say, listen, we want to be Israelis, or it's so good for them now that they can just reap the benefits of being Israelis without having the responsibilities, and they'd rather keep it that way?
Well, this is all our fault, not theirs. 100% our fault. If you speak when you interview one of the members of the Druze community, which hopefully you'll do soon, they will give you a different answer, because they have to be much more careful. The same reason that they keep their religion very secret, and they don't let out a lot about their religion because they have to protect themselves from Islam. They'll answer this question a little bit differently. Me being a Jew and an Israeli, and because it's only you and me sitting here talking and nobody else is listening to us.
And because we live in a free society, not a fierce society, so we can say what we want to say.
So because this is a little dangerous for them, and I'll answer it clearly. It's our fault that they can't be full citizens. They would like nothing better, just like the Shomronim, by the way, just like the Samaritans. They would like nothing more than to be full Israeli citizens completely. If we tell them at any point, we give them a document that says, you are staying in Israel, period, never going to Syria, to Lebanon, or to any other Islamic leadership, they would immediately take on all the responsibilities. Now, I'll tell you quietly, many of them do serve in the military. Many of them do serve. They changed their address to one of the Galilean Druze. They all have the same names, so it's very easy for them to take on a cousin's name and go and serve. If you go to their villages in the Golan, they're beautifully structured and clean. You're never going to find a community cleaner that takes more pride in their little alleys than in the Druze community. I wish some of the Jewish communities would keep their alleys that clean. They're proud people, and they have to be careful because for 1,000 years they've been chased all over the place. So they have to be very, very careful about the steps that they take publicly.
Mm-hmm. All right, but if we were to say, well, Israel has put Israeli law on the Golan Heights, and even the United States recognized that. So, I mean, they should feel to some degree there's no guarantee. Well, you know what? According to some people, who we won't mention their names, even the Arabs in the Triangle in the Galilee have no guarantee because people keep, flutzing around with all the different ceasefire lines and armistice lines and borders. And until we finally get up and say, this is it, this is Israel, and we're putting, law here, then not just the Druze, but also certain Arabs and certain Jews like myself, who technically right now don't live in a country. I live under military occupation in Judea. Of what?
Of a Druze.
Why?
The military commander of Judea and Samaria and Gaza is a Druze.
So that's interesting. So I'm being my military commander is a Druze. Oh, you can't make this stuff up. Okay. So what else is planned for this week?
But first, before I tell you what's planned for the week, I love that word, flubbing around. I think we should talk.
I thought I just made that up.
I think we should talk to David Friedman. I think there should become a diplomatic term for what is happening in this region.
This is a family show, so I can't really use the words that I'd like to use.
So what's planned for this week is today, Wednesday, is going to be a very special day in schools throughout the world, Jewish schools, non-Jewish schools. They're going to raise flags. They're going to have assemblies. They're going to talk about it in class.
In Israel as well?
In Israel, less, because the focus this week of this year, look, we did this without spending a penny. We did this completely without spending one penny. So therefore, we were very limited in what we could.
Well, you just had people volunteering to do this?
Yes, we just spread it out. We just did it with what we could, using social media, using I don't want to reveal my name, but many decades of relationships. and a lot of phone calls, a lot of meetings, a lot of organizations that, with the assistance of many organizations, the Conference of Presidents' new CEO, William Daroff, who's a good friend, launched it from Jerusalem. You can go to the website Druze Vets, DRUZE, VETS.org, and see it. You can go on Twitter, you can go on Facebook, it's all there. All you have to do is put in Druze Vets or Druze Israel, and it'll pop up everywhere on the internet. And as people as far as Japan and China and Korea, all the South American countries, most of Europe, all bound together, and they all said, yes, of course, this is great. This is a good idea. The foreign ministry has been very helpful. Every one of their consulates and embassies around the world has sent out a message to the people in the country and has galvanized people in the country. Israelis feel very strong. It's a visceral, and it's, to use a Jewish word, parv. It's not something that is on the right or on the left. It's not political. All Israelis feel the same way about their Druze brothers in arms and in life. And then Friday is the pinnacle. Friday is the preparation. And on Saturday, every rabbi in the world is going to be talking about Yitro. There is no rabbi that's not going to be talking about Yitro during his or her drasha or homily, whatever you want to call it. Many of our friends who also, non-Jewish friends who also have their services on Saturday, will also be mentioning Yitro because that's the topic of the week. And all we've asked is that they take 10 seconds, 15 seconds out of their 10-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute, depending what denomination you are, talk about the parasha and mention the fact that they have that this Yitro relationship with Moshe continues to this day with practically no differences, practically no changes. They're advisors, they're helpful, they're partners. And one day you should sit at one of these shows before Yitro and actually get into his personality. Mm-hmm. The Jews, I've learned over the last month while I've been researching this and getting ready for this, tremendous things about this man. The things that the Jewish sources, including the Zohar, which I'm not a big fan of, but even the secret, quiet, backroom discussions have tracts and tracts and tracts on this man who Rashi, one of the great, probably the greatest commentator on Jewish sources, on both the Torah and Nevi'im and the Talmud, said had 7 names, and each one of those names is a very interesting connection to God, to the Jewish people, and to the land of Israel.
Okay, and the Druze are connected with us now, and hopefully we're going from strength to strength, and they are going to be our partners, and it just shows that if anybody is loyal to Israel, they can rise to any kind of position that they want, irrespective of their religion, because even though Israel is a Jewish country, we have brothers, and that's so hugely important.
So again, go to hashtag Shukran Druze 2020. Mm-hmm. You could find it on druzevets.org. The instructions are right there, how to participate. It doesn't cost any money. There's no solicitation. It is 100% a movement of the heart. We're Jews and non-Jews, whether you want to do it through prayer or simple thanks, which is also a form of prayer. Hashtag Shukran Druze 2020 and druzevets.org. And we should all be as lucky as many of us are here in the land to continue this relationship, to continue our building here in the land, to continue the growth of the love and the connection between the non-Jewish community in the world and the Jewish community in the world, all from a positive perspective and from a good place in our heart.
Mm-hmm. And for mutual respect. You don't have to become the other. You can still stay who you are and how you believe, and still respect and love your brothers. And I think that that's an incredibly important message for today. And the next time you come to Israel, because everybody listening knows that you have to be planning your trip, is, get up to the north. And there's a lot of Druze villages up there. There are even situations where you can order a kosher Druze meal if you want. There are people who are catering to those who keep kosher, and they've got some awesome food, and you can do that. And to really get to know and sit with somebody over a meal especially, and really understand understand where they're coming from and appreciate the fact that they are in here with Israel.
And if you contact the Druze Veterans Association at druzevets.org, the organization is more than happy to set up the trip up north to the Druze communities. There is some fascinating Zionist history within the communities, including the place where Hatikva, the Israeli national anthem, was written, is within one of the Druze villages, Dayat Carmel. As Eve said, there's now kosher meals, there's a kosher restaurant, and the Veterans Association would love to have you visit. Hopefully you'll come, you'll take advantage of it, and you'll learn a little bit about the other within the other.
Okay, everybody. So Mike Cohen, thanks so much for joining me today and enlightening us about the Druze, one of the more interesting minorities here in Israel. Eve Harow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. Thanks to Tabitha and to Ben. And take care, everybody. More to come next week when I can think a little bit clearer. I'll fill you in on a whole bunch of other things that are happening. In the meantime, take care, everybody. Goodbye for now.
You're listening to the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com, broadcasting the truth and beauty